to bring this back, we watched Haar, Haar, which is a British sort of somewhere between a short and a feature film. It's sort of 80 minutes long film starring Kate Reynolds. That's just
I can't remember the name of the actors.
So basically, this film concerns a sort of unit production manager. This is another film about a someone involved in the film industry.
Yeah. Write about what you know.
Write about what you know.
That's
Who
okay.
is sort of temporarily stranded in Budapest due to a closed airport.
Because of COVID? No, closed
No,
airport.
some other issue that's kind of not explained. And during this kind of stay, she receives some sort of tragic news about the death of her father, and also has a series of kind of like ambiguous encounters with people who are new and people who she doesn't know. And the crucial thing, the difference is on the kind of like the Mark Jenkin effect is that it's shot on Super 8. It's shot on Kodak Super 8 films. So my concern always with the, I guess, aesthetic decision and a formal decision to shoot in film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot that has been done with film historically. Like most film that has been shot, or sort of like most of the years in which film has been shot, was shot on film. Varying qualities of varying registers on everything from the Lumiere Cinecam up to sort of like 35 millimeter. It is you're making a particular kind of decision. You're making a particular statement by choosing to shoot on Super 8, which is a lightweight handheld format, which is capable, as actually Mark Jenkin does, acknowledge and express, is capable of being exposed interestingly, is capable of being pushed to interesting places in terms of lens flare. And
exactly. It's more vulnerable to sort of light leaks and scratches. I mean, generally, the lower the gauge of film, the more it looks like film, like the more it's unavoidably...
So on Super 8, you're filmiest. And the thing was, this is shot in such lustrous Kodak and in such a kind of normative way on tripod, often just panning around, that any benefits that might have accrued from shooting on film were lost, because what you've really got is you've got a digital film that looks like it's had a kind of film filter effect put over the top.
Yeah,
so it felt like it nullified itself.
It doesn't justify itself.
No, it doesn't.
And this technique is more or less the same technique that you get in Mark Jenkin's Bait, which, for all the rude things we say about Mark Jenkin, I think was quite a good film, and a kind of a very exciting debut.
A very good film.
And yes, it uses this technique of putting the sound in afterwards, but it absolutely.
But he uses that. So he shoots
in
kind of this quite high contrast black and white. He shoots with like real depth. So for Mark Jenkin, the kind of as it were, the silent partner of that film is the sea, because it's shot on the coast, and the sea is always something we see in Bait in this kind of washy Jean Epstein style blur in the distance. It's really kind of enthralling and kind of sublime in a way, whereas this, you're not really getting it, because it just looks like a sort of like nice picture postcard of Budapest. Most of it's shot kind of medium and sometimes in close up.
Who's this guy Ben Hecking? So he's a
DOP.
He's a DOP, but he has directed
shooting films.
He has directed a few sort of video on demand rom-coms, it seems,
something like that.
But yes, it feels a bit like a kind of film made between other films, a kind of passion project. It doesn't, unlike the film we were just talking about, it doesn't look like a Vodafone advert.
And yet there are phones in it,
and that there are quite sort of funny sort of Super 8 shots of people using iPhones. But yes, it has a thanks to Joanna Hogg at the end. So it's from a certain stable, I would imagine. Although it has none of the skill of Joanna Hogg's work. It was
like a perfectly fine. It was finely written, and I think Kate Reynolds is very good in the role as this kind of protagonist who's going through this, sort of personal trauma. There's a very sexy scene, I suppose, which is, throughout she acts very competently and interestingly, but I think it does a disservice to itself by having this ADR. It does a disservice to itself by choosing to shoot in film, which ends up being a distraction from, and it basically gives it an out on having to make any formal interesting compositional decisions, because it's saying, oh well, it's in film, so it's interesting formally, and it's not interesting because it's shot in film, because it didn't need that. It felt like,
but the thing is,
it's such an agile format to shoot in. This is a tiny camera that's about this big, it weighs about less than a bag of sugar, right? And it's like, it's something that Jonas Mekas used. Jonas Mekas would dance with his camera. This is something that's so super supple, and it's super pliable to capture footage, to skip frames, to jump, to jolt, to particularly when the film is really about this woman's interiority and her feeling like she's kind of acting weird around various people that she has to interact with.
Her interiority is entirely unexplored, and it may not be the actor's fault, but it does absolutely lack any kind of
The film is just interested in like these comedy of manners, like, no one knows that her dad's just died, so she's acting kind of weird at a party, and then she's a bit distant when she meets a former colleague, and someone's a bit nice to her and gives her a sandwich. So we see these kind of exterior kind of expressions of interiority, but the point with something like Super8 is that's the instrument to explore the strange perspectival distortions.
But you're also not really taken on a journey. I mean, every scene is just so flat. But I do want to say about this Super 8 thing. I mean, why did we even watch this film, right? Because it was shot on Super 8. Because it's sort of in the program, amidst a long line of other, I mean, we get emails as delegates. We receive emails every day from desperate producers and sales agents saying, you must come and see this film, and
you can really make a difference.
It's invariably, almost by definition, not a film we actually are seeking out because it's not by an established director. And so, they're saying they're sort of trying to entice us with, maybe a minor star or whatever, or trying to ask if we want to interview the director, and these are not personalized messages. They don't know who we are either. This is a mutual lack of
a veil of ignorance,
excitement. But yes, regrettably, our emails have been added to some list, and we hear about all these films. And this was the only film that we are reviewing that we also were kind of
neophytes to. This was unknown to us.
That we were actually kind of that exists within that category of LFF film that just is like being like hopelessly hawked. It stood out to us. Why? Because I suppose because it's British and we sort of want to see what a low budget British indie feature looks like, and also because it's this 16mm has this quality in the industry of marking something out, making people think, it might actually look kind of interesting or be kind of interesting. Sadly not. And also weirdly, they seem to have spent the whole budget on like quite expensive music choices. It starts with Future Islands. I mean, maybe this person just has a deal or they're just winging it, but weird, like bad aesthetically to
very
start
programmatic.
With that song.
Well, when your whole point of your film is to have these kind of this separation between the lived reality of what is shot and this ADR music, to then have this other, it's unintentionally alienating to then just pump in a bit of, it's very Channel 4 drama in a way. It's sort of, we'll just drop in a bit of kind of vibey millennial music to kind of set the scene. It felt unconsidered. It didn't need that music. It was, I think, any opportunity to estrange the experience. And she's going through a deeply, as it were, once in a lifetime experience, which is a parent dying. More than once in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime, maybe. But you know what I mean. It's a very extremely uncommon experience. Lots of, she's put in situations where the opportunities for estrangement are presented, but we only really get that level of the script, which is her acting a bit weird around people. Even when she kind of spins out a bit, the camera really doesn't do anything differently. It just kind of, there's a few cuts and the editing kind of paces up, so we get a few slices into the shot and we see her from a few different angles, whereas the rest of the time it's been a little bit reverse shot.
Would have actually been a decent short, maybe.
I think it feels like a short that was padded, because at the end we get these two very over-mannerized monologues by these characters. She has this understanding with this guy, and she talks about her dead dad, and he talks about him being a bit of a shit dad to his young daughter. But these monologues felt so manicured and preened to sound deep and meaningful, and kind of like street wisdom in a way, that it just felt, and they occupied the last 20 minutes of this film, so it did feel like a much shorter film that was then sort of
it's really pushing that 80-minute mark. It feels like it just got over the line.
I didn't love it. I thought Kate Reynolds' performance was really good. I didn't feel that the film was justified, and when you make a film in this format, it's really jumping up and down, going, "Hey, I'm shot in this technique," and so do something with it, do something interesting with it. Surprising that he's allegedly a cinematographer, a DOP, because it didn't feel like the hand of a DOP behind it, apart from the technical, know-how. I'm sure there's a lot of technical know-how how to, use this ably in the field, but it was too pristine.
It wasn't Greg Toland. It had no compositional flair whatsoever.
It was basically like using it's like using a hacksaw to carve an ice sculpture, right? It's uninteresting,
crude.
So that's thing, because what the result is something that just looks very nice. And like I said, it looks like someone's just stuck an Adobe filter, like old film effect filter over a digital film.
It doesn't look nice in any way other than the fact that Super 8 looks nice. And it's not actually, we're now discovering, after the heady excitement of the BFI Film Festival, which we love, we are also discovering that it's not enough. You can't just shot stuff on film. You actually have to, it seems like an obvious thing to say, but you actually have to shoot an interesting shot, and the characters have to have rich interior worlds.